right. Hi, everybody. We are live once again. My name is Jeremy. I am with Made Management, and I'm excited to be here with you guys today. Welcome, everyone. So today I am still in Montana. I'm sitting outside of my production trailer here, and I'm excited to be with you guys. There's a lot of little bugs flying around today. It's beautiful out. It's like 70 degrees out today, and which is great. I don't know what the conversion rate for those of you who are on Celsius, but it's a lot warmer than it has been. It's been cold up here and a lot of snow. I've been doing a lot of hiking too through the mountains. I'm up near Glacier National Park. So I'm sitting outside today, enjoying the beautiful weather and looking out for bears as I sit here. I have my bear spray with me. So my bear spray. I'm in the middle of the woods. Uh, I actually, about a mile from where I'm staying, yesterday, I saw a mountain lion run across the road. So, those of you who are not that interested in what I have to say today, you might want to just stay tuned just to see if I get attacked by anything. That'll be interesting. So, I have a special guest that's with us today, and so as a reminder, feel free, you guys, as you're tuning in, feel free to type in any questions that you have as we're talking, and we will try to get to your questions towards the end, and try to answer all those questions that you guys have coming in. And welcome everybody who's joining today. I hope you guys are having a beautiful weekend. It's a holiday weekend here in the U.S. If you're joining from that, happy Memorial Day, everyone. And let me go ahead and introduce my guest. I'm going to bring him on here today. I have the privilege, the honor of talking with Mr. Craig today. Let me add him here. There he is. Hello, welcome.
Hello there.
Hi, Craig. How are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. Where are you joining us from today?
Los Angeles, well, actually Hollywood, California. I'm actually in Hollywood right now. Yeah.
Okay, well, very good. Well, I hope you're having a good weekend. Thank you for joining us on a holiday weekend.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And Craig, last time I saw you in person, I think was in July, I believe in Orlando. Was the
Probably.
last time I had the privilege of spending some time with you in person, but I'm glad you're able to join me here on the session today. But welcome. If you don't mind, those people that are joining us and watching might not know who you are. So if you don't mind letting us know, introduce yourself and tell us who you work with and kind of maybe some of your experience in what you're doing.
Sure. So I'm Craig Holzberg. I'm the owner of Avalon Artists Group. We are a full-service nationwide talent agency representing actors of all ages and categories for film, TV, theater, commercials, voiceovers, industrial, and hosting. Our main offices are New York and Hollywood, and we have offices in Chicago, Miami, Atlanta as well. So we cover the whole country. I have been an agent for 26 years, and I've had my own agency for 22 years. I am truly bi-coastal. I split my time between New York and Los Angeles. I'm coming to you live from Hollywood, California today, and I'm getting on a plane first thing tomorrow morning to fly to New York. So I basically go back and forth between both coasts. But both offices are fully staffed. We work as a team in my agency. So you don't just have one agent, you have a team of agents behind you, because I firmly believe that it's better to have a team, several sets of eyes and ears looking out for you than just one set of eyes and ears. I'm excited to be here tonight to answer any questions anybody has and take it from there.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. So you're bi-coastal. You spend, is it really about half your time in New York and half in LA?
Yeah, I would say under normal circumstances, it's half and half. There's certain times of the year we just finished, February through April or actually mid-May is very busy with college showcase season, with all the graduating seniors who are graduating from acting schools and acting conservatories. So I actually it was more like 3 weeks in New York, 1 week in LA this past couple of months. But now that June is rolling around, now that summer is approaching us, I'll go back to my just half and half.
Nice. Very good. I used to be bi-coastal back in the day. I forget how long ago it was, maybe 12 years ago. I had a studio location in LA and one in New York. And as a photographer, I worked professionally as a photographer before I got into the management side of things. But I loved it. And I felt at home in both places. They're both unique cities, completely different. And every time I landed in New York, it's always like, oh, I love being back here. It's great to be here. You have all your favorite restaurants, and then of course spending a couple weeks in New York and then going back to LA, same exact thing. But is there one location that you prefer over the other?
Yeah, I feel very blessed that I get to work and live in the two greatest cities in the United States. But when people ask me that question, I always say to them, I prefer living in LA because it's 70 degrees every day and you don't have to fight hundreds of thousands of people on the street. But actually prefer working in New York. I like the culture of the business and the vibe of the business in New York. Plus, New York, we do live theater in our office out of New York. I'm a big fan of live theater, so that contributes to my preference of working in New York. But both places are great. I'm very lucky that I get to do both.
Yeah, definitely. Both places are amazing, and yeah, the energy of New York, you can't beat that, right? Every time, just the buzz
No,
on the street,
can't compare
It's
it anywhere else.
right. Very good. Well, Craig, tell me, how did you get involved as an agent? You said you started about 25 years ago, but what caused you to do that? Were you working in a different area before, or what
Yeah,
happened?
it's a great question. So being an agent was not anything I ever had thought about or considered. At the time, I was working in New York. I was the senior vice president. Had been working in fashion for 20 years. After trying acting for a little while after college, and I worked in fashion for 20 years. That's what moved me to New York in the mid 90s. And then I was working for Calvin Klein in New York as the senior vice president of sales and marketing for all of North America. I worked for the Italian subsidiary, which was wonderful. I got to go to Italy 6 times a year, learned how to speak Italian fluently, and got to eat a lot of great pizza and pasta. Um,
Nice.
I was working for Calvin Klein at that time. They decided to close my division. The Italian division was closed, so I was downsized out of a job. But I wasn't in any hurry to get another job because I was under a 2-year contract and it was only a year and 3 months into that 2-year contract. So they had to buy me out of my contract and essentially gave me a 9-month vacation. But me being me and not one to sit around and do nothing, I thought, well, okay, what does the next chapter of my career look like? I knew I didn't want to stay in fashion because I've done it for 20 years. I did think about getting back into voice lessons and acting class and pursuing a career on Broadway. Also thought about going back to school to become a teacher, which is something I still think about on a daily basis. And as I was trying to figure all that out, a very close friend of mine, who is now a very well-known stage and screen star, called me and said, "Hey, my agency is looking for an agent. I think you'd be fantastic. You should talk to them." And my knee-jerk reaction was, "No, thank you. I was an actor. I don't think I want to work with actors, but I appreciate you thinking of me." And he said, "Craig, you have a business degree, you've been an actor, and you love theater." He said, "I can't imagine anybody being a better agent than you. Just talk to them and see what they have to say." And I thought, well, got nothing to lose. I don't need a job. I'm not under any stress or pressure to find a job. So I thought I'll go and talk to them and see what they have to say. And I did. And as they say, the rest is history. Something very unprecedented back then, 26 years ago, and even today in our business, is I was hired as an agent, right in as an agent. I didn't have to be an assistant. I didn't have to learn the business. I think the owner of that agency that I started working for felt that because of my background, my business degree, I'd been an actor, that it might work out. And so it did. It worked out quite well. And I decided after 5.5 years working for that agency and seeing them benefit from all of my hard work, I would just create the perfect career and be able to move back to LA, which is where I wanted to live as my home base. And yeah, so then 2005, I opened up Avalon Artists Group with New York and LA. At the time, it was just New York and LA. And now we've expanded into Chicago, Miami, and Atlanta.
Nice. I love that story. What I love about this story is every time I'm on here and I talk to somebody and I ask them for their backstory, it seems like everybody starts doing something, but then transitions into whatever it is that they're doing today. And I always tell aspiring actors, models, that it's all about networking, right? When you're on set and when you're meeting people, and your responsibility as an actor is to try to meet as many people as possible, but network as much as you can, because so many people in this industry start off doing one thing and then end up doing something else later on. And those connections can really help you as you're going through this career in the entertainment business, right? And you started off as an aspiring actor, right? And now look at you, you're a successful, agent and working by coastal and doing what you enjoy, but not knowing that that's what you're going to be doing, right?
Yeah, I truly believe that we all go down the path we're supposed to go down at the time we're supposed to go down it. So I think it was probably always destined that this is something that I was going to be doing. And also too, it's very interesting because I acted from a very young age, and I was performing all through my junior high school and high school years. And then I did it when I graduated college. So I was in the industry then, and then I transferred. Then I moved into the fashion industry, and then back into the entertainment industry. What's really interesting is that the fashion industry and the entertainment industry have a lot of parallels. They both deal with a lot of drama. There's a lot of glitz. There's a lot of glamour. And I always tell people now, instead of selling expensive clothing and sportswear to department stores and specialty stores across the country, I sell actors to casting directors. So it's still all very much relatable.
I love it. Yeah, it's the parallels are very similar, and the same with anything within the entertainment industry. Parallels are similar. There's obviously with singers or voiceover or modeling, there's going to be very similar parallels, even though it's different industries, so to speak. But Craig, let me ask you: do you represent clients only in the U.S. or do you represent clients on an international level too?
So we have clients who work internationally, but we do not have offices internationally. So for instance, currently I have two clients that are based in the UK, in London, and another client who's based in Ireland. They have separate representation for Europe. We do not represent them for Europe. But we do submit them on projects that are released in the United States, even though they live overseas.
Perfect. And then as far as age wise, what do you guys specialize in all ages, or do you prefer a certain demographic?
No, we, as I said in my intro, we represent actors of all ages and categories. Our youngest is probably, I don't know, 6, maybe younger. We might have some 4 or 5-year-olds in our youth department, and our oldest is probably in their 80s. So all ages.
Nice, I love it. I always tell people it's never too late, right? So you talk to some people sometimes and they said, oh, I would love to be an actor. And they're in their mid 30s or something. And I'll tell them, you're never too old, right? I mean, mid 30s is not.
No. And yeah, no one is, you're never too old to pursue your dreams. And a great story I can share about that is I had traveled to Long Island, New York years ago to see a client in a show. I had a client who was playing the lead in Hairspray, and I went out there to see him, and there was another actor in the show that played another one of the lead roles, who happened to mention to my client, hey, you said your agent was here. Do you think you could introduce me? I'd like to, possibly talk to him about representation. At the time, Bruce was, gosh, he's been with me now for almost 15 years. And he was probably in his 50s, maybe early 50s. No, probably late 50s, and he's well into his 60s now, and he is an obstetrician. He delivered babies for years. He always wanted to be an actor, but his parents, like my parents, said, no, you have to go to, they said medical school. My parents said business school. Anyway, he had a love for performing. So while he was delivering babies, he was also doing community theater in his hometown. And, then he decided to pursue this full time at the ripe age of, mid 60s, probably, or no, mid 50s. And he works all the time. So I completely agree. It is never, ever too late to pursue your dream. And certainly in our industry, there's no age limit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And then they need people of all ages for all, TV shows, movies, commercials, everything, right? So
Commercials, everything, absolutely.
now, what would you recommend? Let's say somebody's watching today, and maybe they're starting off in the business, and they maybe done some of the things like you mentioned that you did, like some local, through school, you did some local productions, and maybe they're just getting outside of school now, right? So they're done with their their primary school, elementary, high school, and maybe they're in their mid 20s, but they really want to start pursuing this full time and really get serious about it. What would be something that you would recommend for them to uh, really to get the next step up, right? Like, what can they do to help with their resume, or what could they do that would impress someone like yourself when they got a chance to maybe meet you?
Yeah. So it really depends on, first and foremost, understanding what they want to pursue in the industry. What are they most interested in doing? Are they interested in doing commercials? Are they interested in film and television work? Are they interested in live theater, stage work? So that's, isolating that, identifying what path they want to go down is first and foremost the most important thing. Then getting the proper training for that, right? So if they're interested in doing on camera work, they need to get on camera training. If they want to do commercial work, commercial training. If they want to be on Broadway, singing and dancing, then they need to be, taking voice lessons and be in dance class as well as acting class, because that's important for theater as well. So that's the first thing we look at when we get a resume from somebody who's interested in breaking into the business. We would look at their training first and foremost. They don't have to have a lot of experience, or they don't have to have any professional experience, quite honestly. We sign actors all the time who are just coming out of school who don't have any professional experience. Or maybe we find a kid, a youth client that's, 10, 11, 12 years old, and, wants to be on TV and wants to act. And, they don't have any professional experience whatsoever, but they have training. And that's first and foremost the most important thing, is that training, because that gives them the foundation and the skill set they need to be successful and be able to work in the industry in whatever medium they prefer. So that would be what we look at and consider more than anything would be training.
Okay. And then as far as like let's say somebody's sitting in a remote part of the world and maybe they don't have access to, training per se near them, right? They're just not a local acting school or coach or something. I know there's a lot of online, but do you recommend, like, even your current people that you represent, do you recommend that they continue their training and that they find something online versus in person? Like, what do you think about all that?
Absolutely. Use whatever resources you have. There are a lot of people that live in smaller markets that they don't have access to good in-person training or good coaching. But now, ever since the pandemic, you can find great training online anywhere. There are, a lot of great acting coaches can do Zoom coaching, or you can Zoom into class. So, as long as you have a good internet connection, which is really important for those things, so you don't freeze up when you're in the middle of class or in the middle of coaching. You don't have to be in a major market like New York or Los Angeles or Atlanta, where you have access to really great acting classes or acting coaches. That all can be accessed now online, which is wonderful.
Nice. And then going back to the resume question. So a new actor, has approached you and you're reading through their resume. Is there anything that they can do that stands out more than others? Let's say you have a pile of 10 resumes in front of you and maybe none of them have any professional experience. What is one thing that you're looking at their resume that if they have on that resume, you think, oh, wow, maybe this person, is passionate about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to the training, but also looking at special skills. That's also something that we would look at. But I think that what we're going to look at, if someone doesn't have any professional experiences, we're going to look at who they're training, who they're studying with, who they're training with, who's their acting coach, who are they taking acting class with, and then we would ask them. If we were interested, we would ask them to put themselves on tape, and tape either. In most cases, we would ask them to tape a scene, but we have actors who have sent in monologues, and that's totally fine as well.
Okay. So when you have somebody do a self tape for the first time, for you prefer a scene. So
Yeah.
where there's multiple conversations happening within that.
Yeah, especially if they're interested in film and television, it's important. I mean, if someone's interested in classical theater or doing stage work, then a monologue would be fine. But if someone is specifically looking to break into the film and television industry, then we would want to see a scene.
Okay. And so how long of a scene or how long of a self-tape do you want to see ideally? Like what's something that you like average?
Yeah, that's a great question. It doesn't really need to be longer than 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes max. We know as industry professionals, quite honestly, I know within 12 to 15 seconds if somebody has skills.
Okay. So
yeah.
So a minute to a minute and a half, they prepare a scene. They go onto Google and search scenes, or they pull something from their favorite TV show, and then obviously with the scene you need to have a good reading partner. What are your recommendations with the reading partner as far as good quality versus poor quality when they're recording?
Yeah, so it's always best if you find another actor or another aspiring actor to be your reader, because they're going to have more probably a better sense of what they need, what's needed. But people get their mom and their dad and their brothers and their sisters to read with them, and it's totally fine. But yeah, someone that understands the process, not just I wouldn't ask somebody who has no idea what acting is all about to necessarily be your reader, but and also run it a couple of times before you put your self-tape together. Do some rehearsal period with your reader, just to make sure that the pacing is right, and also that they're comfortable. Because again, if they're not actors, they're not going to be used to looking at a script and reading opposite another actor. So but just making sure that the pacing is right and the person is comfortable. Making sure that the reader's off camera. We don't want to see the reader. We only want to see you. But we need to hear the reader loud and clear, because again, a scene is going to be a conversation between two people.
Right. So they're off camera, they're having the conversation, but the camera's only on the one actor that you're wanting
Correct.
to see.
Yep.
And now, like you said, having a family member or friend do it is fine. It works, but preferably having another actor with you is better, because the actor knows what, kind of a little bit more about what's going on. Maybe they've had some training. They're a little more used to these types of things, right? So again, going back to the networking, some of you that are watching might not have another actor that you can comfortably read a scene together with, and that's where, going to take some training classes, going and meeting other actors while you're in these sessions, making friends with people who are, like you and want to be a part of this industry, is where you're going to find those good connections. So now on a self-tape, let's talk about that briefly and then we'll move on. But how important is it, like lighting, obviously sound quality, like where should the camera be positioned? Like what's a great self-tape? What do you like to see?
Yeah, that's a great question, and really, really important. Having the proper setup is really, really important. So you can self-tape from anywhere. You don't have to go you pay money to rent a studio to self-tape, but you need to find a place that's. Sorry, I'm just looking. I'm in a hallway and in a hotel right now, and I'm gonna just give me 2 seconds. I'm just gonna close these doors so it's not so
okay.
loud.
Yeah, no worries. Go ahead. Yeah, take your time. And I'm fighting off the bugs out here. You guys, I know those people are watching. You see those?
There we go. Hopefully that'll be less noisy. Anyway, so finding a quiet place to self-tape, setting up your self-tape area in a quiet place. So if you're at home with your family, then finding some place at home. If you share an apartment with roommates, something away from the other noise. We don't want to hear animals, barking or meowing. We don't want to hear the television set. We don't want to hear your roommates playing video games, all of that stuff. So finding a quiet space. I suggest everybody get a pop-up screen. You can get them on Amazon. They're really inexpensive. My preference is blue. I think everybody looks good against the blue background, but there are other colors that are totally fine. Having a ring light to make sure that your lighting is good, and framing, make sure your framing is good. So we got to be able to hear you, we got to be able to see you. If you don't have a blue screen, it's totally fine if you want to shoot in front of a wall. But for instance, where I'm sitting, if this were my house, I wouldn't shoot in front of this painting because it's distracting, right? You don't want to pull focus from the work and from the acting. So I would either take the picture down, or I would find somewhere where there's a solid wall. It's you want us to be focused on what's going on camera and not what's going on behind you, because it's easy to distract people. I've had actors send self-tapes in where they're standing in front of a bookcase, and I'm like, oh wow, I read that book, and I've heard about that book, and like then I'm not focused on the acting. I'm missing the whole point, right? So
Right.
yeah, really important to be in a quiet space, that the lighting is right, that the sound is right. And as far as framing, if you see the way that I am right now, this is actually a good example, because Jeremy, you're a little, there isn't enough space between the top of your hat and the frame. And for me, there's too much space. So what I always say is about like that. There should be about 2 inches. I think is ideal, and chest up, right? I'm seated, but you probably can't tell that I'm seated. I am seated. I always suggest that when actors are doing their self-tapes, that they don't sit. You should stand. Even if the scene calls for you, oh, you're sitting at the dinner table, or you're being interrogated by the FBI or whatever, still best to stand, because we want to get a 3/4 shot.
Right. And then as far as quality, like settings on the phone, do you tell actors like what quality you want to see, or does that really matter?
Yeah, no, we don't get that specific, because they first of all, any iPhone or Android takes great videos. There's no reason to there's no point. You don't need to go out and buy an expensive camera. You can get what you need with an Android or with an iPhone. So no, the quality, they just have to watch. I stress this. You got to watch your self-tape before you send it out, right? So if you're sending it to your agent or your manager, make sure you've watched it and edited out any mistakes. And certainly if you don't have representation and you're sending it directly to a casting director, you want to make sure that it's perfect. You don't want to send it because you don't want to look unprofessional, like you don't know what you're doing. So if I told you how many of the actors that we represent, who are all professional actors, who mess up in the middle of a scene and they say a few choice curse words, and then they just start over, keep going, and then they send me the tape and they don't realize that they didn't edit out them cursing or talking to their reader or approaching the camera and turning it off. All these things that I think to myself, this is so obvious. They clearly didn't watch their own self-tape. So make sure you watch your own self-tape.
So from experience that watch the
I know to experience too well. Yeah. If I had a dollar, I always say that. If I had a dollar, every time,
you'd be rich.
That's for sure.
Well, people that are tuning in, that are from different parts of the world and they're at home, I always tell them, we talked briefly about self-tapes, but start practicing today. Like that's one thing that you can really start doing, because sometimes when you have an audition, it's last minute. Right. It may be they're looking for a fill-in and they need it's a last minute fill-in, and those opportunities, don't come all the time. And so do you see auditions where you get that they need that audition the next day? Like, does that happen?
Well, not as frequently as you might think. I mean, based on union rules now, they're supposed to give actors 48 hours to self-tape. Right. Sometimes there's an emergency situation where we'll get, it'll be 4:00 in the afternoon and they'll say, we need this tape by 2:00 tomorrow. So, that's not even 12 hours. But listen, professional actors can get it done. I have a handful of clients. I could literally send them 12 pages of dialogue at 6:00 at night on Monday and tell them I need it by noon on Tuesday, and they'd get it done. They'd make it happen. Now, nice. I would certainly not force them to do that, because that's not enough time to give an actor to prepare. But you're either this is either your priority or it's not. Now, there are extenuating circumstances. I have to do a shift at work. I have school, all those kinds of things where we would then try to get an extension. But for the most part, we don't see last minute auditions. There's usually at least 48 hours to get those auditions in.
But how much do you love that actor knowing that they're going to get it done? Like, you don't have to worry about them.
I know who those actors are. So it's like, yeah, because it makes my life and the team's lives easier. Like when there's problems, like they didn't edit their tape. And, that's the other thing too, is we've learned that, if we know that a tape is due, like for instance, prior to jumping on to chat with everybody here, I sent out some self-tape requests, and they're not due into casting until Wednesday of next week, right? So Saturday, well, let's say 6:30 in Los Angeles. So if I sent those appointments out into New York, it was 9:00 or 8:30 their time. So today's a wash. But Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, that's 3 full days to prepare an audition. Now, the tape is not actually due until Thursday to casting, but we have to add a cushion, because if we get a tape where it's not edited properly, or we want the actor to do something differently, if they got it to us 5 minutes before it was due to casting, well, then we wouldn't be able to send the tape because there were problems. So we're going to build in that cushion so that we can make those corrections if necessary.
Nice. And how important is it for an actor to get the self-tape done right away versus waiting until Wednesday?
Yeah, it's very important, because casting directors watch the self-tapes when they receive them. So, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Jeremy, because I've had several cases where we've had actors, we've sent out several self-tape requests to actors for a television show, or for, I'd say for a TV show, not so much for films, because those have a longer casting process. But, let's say we sent out 5 self-tape requests, and they were due on Wednesday. And some of our actors got those tapes in on Monday. Well, they got the tape in on Monday. The cast director watched it, sent it off to the producers, and they had an offer for the role on Tuesday, 24 hours before the self-tapes for all the other actors were due. The deadline was due. So those actors all missed out on the opportunity because they didn't send their tape in right away. So Don't procrastinate. And just because we've given you 4 days doesn't mean you should take 4 days. Certainly take enough time to put together a really good quality self-tape. But in my opinion, it shouldn't take more than 24 hours to get that done.
Right. And speed is important because of that aspect. That doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, right? And
well, cast directors definitely watch the tapes as they come in, because if they've sent out 50 self-tape requests, they're not going to wait till all 50 come in and then sit and watch 50. They're going to watch them as they come in, and they're going to pick who are the ones. Yes, this is the one I'm going to send to my producer and director. No, this one I'm not sending to my producer and director.
Right. If they find that the perfect person for the role within the first 5 self-tapes,
right,
they're
going to hire. They're going to make an offer. Absolutely. Yeah. They're not going to wait to see what else is out there. They're going to be like, that's exactly what we're looking for. That's who we're going to hire.
Right. Yeah. And that's what there's so much stigma within the acting world, but I think a lot of actors, they think so, technically through their technique and their, what they're doing, but they don't really think in terms of practical who they're dealing with. And it's just normal day-to-day people, that are watching these things. And, think of it as anything else. If they turn on your self-tape, and if it's a bad quality self-tape, they're not going to watch the whole thing either, right? They're going to see the first 15 seconds of it and say, oh, I can't hear half the words they're saying. I don't understand them. They're not going to spend the next 2 minutes watching the rest of it. They're going to turn it off just like anybody else would and move on to the next. And so it's important to make sure that you have good quality, produced self-tapes. You don't have to be a professional, but start thinking of the little things that are important. Now,
it's all about the attention to detail.
Right. And those of you sitting at home, today wanting to move forward in your career and wanting to get representation, start practicing self-tapes even before you get self-tape requests, right? Because that would be basically the next step, right? So if somebody is represented by you, Craig, what would be the next step for them after they do the onboarding with you is self-tapes, right? I mean, that's basically the entire process from that point on until they book something, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they're interested in film and TV, certainly. If they're interested in theater, then they would have self-tape requests and live auditions. But yeah, for film and TV, once we've onboarded somebody and we've decided to work together, we start submitting them immediately on breakdowns and for all the projects that are being cast that they're right for. And hopefully we start seeing some bites from casting directors who send in self-tape requests.
And if you bring on a new person, I'm sure you want them to be able to produce a self-tape as quickly as possible on their first go around, right? Like if you expect them to have the lighting down, you expect them to have the sound quality down, and their background set up, and everything as professional as quality as possible, even on their first request.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's also why we build in that cushion, because we want to make sure that we have that time to give them constructive criticism or that necessary feedback that's required.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. So now let's talk a little bit about theater, because I know that some people I talk to, they don't maybe represent people in theater, and some do, but I know that you have a good amount of knowledge and experience in that area. But how are theater auditions happening? Are they half and half with live and in person versus self-tape, or are they all going to want to see you in person, or can you explain that a little bit to us?
Yeah. So I would say for theater, it's gone back to about 75%, maybe 60% in person, and then either 40 or 35% in self-tapes. There are some casting offices that still do self-tapes initially before they have their in-person callbacks, but all callbacks are happening in person. So for instance, if we send a self-tape, to an actor who is currently on tour with, Wicked, and they have an appointment, they have a self-tape for something else, they can send in the self-tape, but we wouldn't want them to self-tape if they weren't available to fly in for the callback, because especially when it comes to stage, that process of being in person in the room with the creative team is essential for their casting process.
And if somebody wants to be in theater, let's say that their dream is to be on Broadway someday, do you tell them, like, are you looking for clients who are living in New York specifically, or looking to move to New York? Because I know that obviously a good portion of theater, is taking place there. Or will you work with somebody who's maybe sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, and wants to be a theater star?
Yeah. So, if someone wants to pursue a career in live theater, and they want to be on Broadway, or they want to go on national tours, or they want to work at great regional theater companies across the country, then ultimately they should be in New York. But we have clients that don't live in New York full time, but can get to New York for those callbacks, or even in the case of an in-person audition, they can get in for the in-person audition when required. So it really we want to make sure that the actor has access to getting where they need to be. It's the same thing if they're sending in a self-tape from somewhere other than Los Angeles for an LA show, where they have to be a local hire in Los Angeles. We just have to make sure they can get to LA in a timely manner. So yeah, the preference, I would say, for anybody wanting to pursue theater, that living in New York is going to be most advantageous, but it's not required. It's not a must.
And what are the lead times for theater when they do their auditions? I know that obviously there's a lot of preparation that goes into these shows, so
Right.
they're probably looking well in advance. But is there, do you see a lot of the same week types of auditions, or are they kind of throwing out there, hey, in 2 weeks we're looking for this, or like
Yeah,
what are the
there's a much larger lead time for theater auditions. Not necessarily for self tapes. It might be the same amount of timing. They might require, they might only give 2 or 3 days for an actor. Like for instance, I sent out while I was working before waiting to log on here, I sent out the show Kinky Boots is going back out on tour, and now the casting director, I think, did send. Is today Saturday? It is Saturday. I don't even know what day it is. The cast director sent those requests out late last night, and they're due on Tuesday, right? So for the agents that don't pay attention to their email, and this is a holiday weekend. I mean,
Right.
I have to say, quite honestly, the casting director, should have given some more time, because it is a holiday weekend. And I'm sure I look at my email constantly. I mean, even though I haven't had a day off in 26 years. So, I'm always looking at my email and all that, because again, I don't want to miss something. I don't want to miss an opportunity for my clients. So, but had I not looked at this until Monday night after the holiday weekend, it'd have been, everybody would have missed the opportunity because there's no way they could have gotten those tapes in, because in New York, if I'm sending it from LA and it's 3 hours later in New York and they're asleep, they're going to wake up to, oh, I have a tape that's due in, wait, what, it's due in 15 minutes. Like, so yeah. So for the most part, we have a lot longer leadway or lead time for a self-tape or for an audition process for theater, for live theater.
It sounds to me like the casting director wanted to go and enjoy their 3-day weekend and come back to a whole bunch of self-tape.
And don't think, and the cast director is actually a friend of mine, and don't think I'm not going to bring that up. Like, I'm glad that you did this so that you could enjoy your holiday weekend. Thank you for making it so I couldn't enjoy mine.
Right, exactly. Yeah, speaking of theater, when I was in New York working as a photographer, I became friends with Laura Kelly, who was the lead role in Mary Poppins. She was Mary Poppins at the time.
Yeah. Yep.
And worked with her, and did some work working with her, and then she got me tickets, kind of front and center there, watch her performance one day. But she was transitioning from theater to film, because she's actually been she was in the movie Sweeney Todd and different films like that, and she's from the UK, and she had her run with Disney's show there, Mary Poppins, and they were ending the show. Like, basically, that run of the show was going to be over. And so she was transitioning back into, film auditions, and she was taking it very seriously. She had a trainer that was helping her physically, like, work out daily, even though how physical is a Broadway show? You're constantly.
It's like, that's like running a marathon. You need to be you have to have unbelievable stamina to do a Broadway show, 8 shows a week. I mean, yeah, right. It's tough on the body and on the voice.
Right, absolutely. So not only was she doing that, but she was getting new headshots done. She was taking acting classes again. And I was talking to her a little bit about that at the time, and she's like, it's such a weird transition going from theater back into film. And here's this professional actress who's had great success in her career, but yet still taking it seriously with her training, and knowing what it takes.
And quite honestly, the training should never stop.
Right.
Yeah, it never stop.
Are all of your people that you represent, are they all currently training for the most part?
They are indeed.
And if they're not, do you get onto them for that, or?
Well, if they're not, I can tell. I can see it in the quality of their work. So yeah. I mean, listen, they have to make their own choices, but we would strongly suggest, if we get a sense that someone hasn't been training recently, or they're not keeping up with honing their craft, that we would strongly suggest that they do so.
And wasn't it true, like, after COVID, like, once things started reopening, I meet with a lot of people, and they mentioned this, but there was a lot of their actors that they could tell were not really pursuing training during COVID.
Oh yes, it was it was rough for a lot of actors. It was like, it wasn't like getting back on a bicycle. It was like, they were like, especially the ones that had in-person auditions, they freaked out. Like, they were super nervous, and these are people that have tons of experience. Like, they should have not been nervous. But listen, if you did, if they weren't doing anything for 18 months but laying on the couch and watching Netflix, then those muscles, an acting muscle, a singing muscle, a dancing muscle is just like the muscles in our body. If we don't use them, they atrophy, right? So it's important to keep those up, so that we are always ready for when that door opens, regardless if that there's been a pandemic or a strike or whatever. Absolutely. Very important.
What are some things, if you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring actor, actress who's out here today, who is looking to get representation, what would that piece of advice be for them in this type of field of career, right? A lot of people think of acting as kind of a side thing, and they say, oh, I'm doing this now to kind of cover everything, and acting's kind of my passion, but this is off to the side. But telling you obviously work with a lot of successful actors and have so for 25 years, but what's one piece of advice you give somebody starting out?
I think that you mean as far as looking for representation, or
just getting involved in this type of business, right? They're wanting to do it, and they haven't had a chance to maybe be represented, so they haven't done any professional auditions yet. What what would you tell somebody like that today?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to, the training is really important, but try to get as much experience as possible, you know, so that you're comfortable with the medium. So if you're interested in film and TV, there's great resources to submit yourself for short films and student films and independent films and things like that, commercial work where you can get experience on camera, right? And have that experience so you know what it's like to show up and be on set and hit your mark and work with a director and an assistant director and all of those things. So yeah, just seek out opportunities to get experience, even if it's not professional. And not that student films and short films aren't professional, because that they are, but if you're not paid, people consider unpaid work to be not professional. That's not necessarily true. Those directors, those writers that put together those short films and student films, they have to do that to graduate their program, in writing or directing. So they have to take it seriously. So those are some great outlets to get that experience on camera.
So look at local colleges or universities that have some sort of film program,
Yep.
and those guys are looking to produce a project to like you said, graduate. So
right, absolutely.
And they need actors. They can only use their friends for so many roles, and obviously they're going to only find friends of their age.
Yeah,
maybe
right.
maybe they have a script that's written with somebody that's younger, somebody who's in their teens, or maybe somebody who's older.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And another side of that, even though maybe you're not getting paid to do that type of work, again, going back to the networking opportunities, what if one of these guys graduates and then becomes the next big director on their first project, 1 year out of graduation, and
Absolutely. It is our business. It's as big as and expansive as everybody thinks our industry is. It's actually quite small. We're all interconnected, and it's, someone knows somebody that and there, it's a wonderful thing about our business, is being able to use those resources of using other actors, other writers, other directors, people that are pursuing the same things that you are, to help each other out. I always tell actors all the time, support one another. I know it's an extremely competitive business, and you and your best friend might be up for the same role. If your best friend gets it, be happy for your best friend, right? Because when you get a role, they're going to be happy for you. So that's one of the things I think that our industry needs to work on in all aspects. Actors need to be more supportive of one another. Agents need to be more supportive of one another. Even though it's so competitive, there's room for everybody, and I think we should all relish and celebrate all of the successes in the business, whether they're our personal successes or the successes of our colleagues, because you know what, there's enough to go around for everybody. And I really wish, it's something I work on. I tell people all the time, just be supportive of everybody in this industry, because if you pay it forward and you help each other, it's going to come back to you.
And it does happen a lot too, where somebody has success and then they kind of bring their friends along with them,
Absolutely.
especially if they transition into production, or they start producing their own projects, they write roles for their friends, and you see that happening, it does happen. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
Did you ever watch the documentary about Sylvester Stallone? That was, I think it's on Netflix. I
No,
forget
I didn't.
but his story is fascinating. It's definitely worth a watch. But I think it came out like a couple of years ago. It's probably still up on Netflix. I forget the name of it, but he wrote the movie Rocky because nobody was giving him roles. He speaks with a lisp and he mumbles and that sort of thing. And he was a working actor in New York at the time, and just struggling, trying to get seen by people, and nope, everybody said no to him. So he wrote Rocky in one day, according to this documentary. And
Wow.
yeah, fascinating. He said he
I
watched
didn't know that story. Yeah.
he watched a boxing match that night. It was one of the big name boxing matches that took place, and he was in New York, and he was so inspired he stayed up all night and wrote Rocky in one day. And then get this. So part of this, he goes on to the story. He actually submitted it like within a week. He had $100,000 offer on it, and he was a poor, struggling actor at the time. And he declined it because they didn't want him to be starring in it because he wrote himself as the star, right? And that was his one thing. He's like, I'm writing this because I want to be
right. He's writing for him. It was a vehicle. He wanted to be a vehicle for him to be able to do what he loves.
Right. So here he was struggling, like barely making ends meet, but he still declined 100,000. But the one thing about this story that blows my mind is, who did he submit that to that he knew that would want to buy and give him an offer of $100,000? Obviously, he did his job while he was auditioning and he networked, right? There's a lot of actors out there that could write a script, but they don't know who to send that to. Yeah. Let alone get an offer for paid for it.
Right. Well, and the other thing too is that I always encourage, along with everybody supporting one another, is don't be afraid to ask for help. People think that asking for help is a sign of weakness. I actually think it's a sign of strength, because you're admitting you don't know something, or you need somebody to help you out with something. So it's the same thing as, like, yeah, I've been an agent for 26 years, and I've been in the industry even longer because I was an actor. I don't know everything. And so when I don't know something, I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call one of my other friends that's an actor or a manager or somebody or a casting director and say, hey, this has never happened before for me. Like, this is new. What would you do? Or have you had experience? That doesn't mean I'm not good at my job. It actually means I'm great at my job, because I'm not afraid to find, to learn something new and to ask for help. And I think that's another thing that actors need to work on too overall is, don't be afraid to ask for help. But when you do ask for help and somebody helps you, be there for them when they need help.
Right. I love that. I love that piece of advice. I've never even heard anybody say it quite like that. That was great. Well, let's wrap up with that remark. I love it. If somebody wants to reach out to you and wants you to represent them, and they found you here today, right? They're like, man, Craig is awesome. I love him. He would be the best agent for me. We would have the greatest connection ever. How could they go about getting information to you? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, so I'll go on the website. All of that information is on the website. When actors are looking for representation, they can submit their materials, and it's on the banner below, www.avalonartists.com. And we monitor that. There's a specific email that says submit your materials here, and we monitor that email on a I won't say daily basis, because some days are busier than others, but certainly on a weekly basis.
Okay. So those entries come in. Now, what can make somebody stand out a little bit more when they do submit through the website? Because I'm sure, you're receiving a lot of submissions through there.
Yeah. Just, we know if we know when you're submitting, why you're submitting, but be specific of what type of representation you're looking for. Are you looking for theatrical or legit representation? Are you looking for commercial representation? Are you looking for voiceover representation? A short and sweet couple sentence introduction in your email, what you're looking for. Don't write 4 paragraphs. We don't have time to read 4 paragraphs. If you're referred by somebody, definitely let us know that. If you met me here tonight, put that in your subject line where we haven't met, but you tuned into the Q&A, and then headshot and resume. Make sure you send your headshot and resume in a universal format. I have a PC, not a Mac, so I don't have time to convert the file to something that I can open up. If it doesn't open up right away, it just goes into my delete file. And if you send you're going to send a show reel or any footage, make sure we can click on it. It takes us right to where we need to go. Again, we don't want to download anything, and we don't want to have to click on other buttons. Like, some people will send their website and say, oh, you can see all my materials on my website. Well, that's great, but then I have to go to the website. I have to click on I have to click on headshot and resume to see your headshot and resume. I have to click on media to see your media. Make it easy for us. Like, one click, I always say one and done. We're very, very busy, but we're also excited to always look at potential new clients for the agency. So don't give us any reason to have to delete your email because the files don't open, or it requires us to take 3 or 4 steps when it could just take 1.
Right. And especially if you're going to take the time to put all that information together and submit, you want your stuff to be seen, right? And get to
But you'd be surprised in this day and age. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, whether there are more Mac users than there are PC users, but you think in this day and age, people would realize, well, I'm not sure that the person I'm sending this to also has a Mac, so why wouldn't you send it in a universal format? But you'd be surprised. We get tons of submissions from, now, people on my team have Macs, so they can open them up. But then they would have to, in order for me to look at it, they would have to convert the file and send it to me so I could look at it. And that's an extra step that we don't want to take.
Right. They're going to do it if it's worth their time, but if they don't feel like
Right.
maybe this is worth the extra time, they're
Right.
not going to do that. So.
Exactly.
Well, Craig, I do appreciate you taking the time on a holiday weekend to visit us, and safe travels back to New York tomorrow. But
Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. This has been wonderful. I always enjoy doing these Q&As for Denise and for the company. So thanks for having me. I hope everybody enjoyed this as much as I did. Everybody enjoy the rest of their weekend and be safe.
Excellent. Well, you too as well, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.
I look forward to it. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, I'm just going to recap what Craig just said as far as submission. That's important, you guys, those of you who are still watching. What we talked about today is about the details, the little things, with your self-tapes, but not also that, but with submitting to an agent. So somebody like Craig, he went over a lot of things really quickly. I asked him, what would you like to see that makes you stand out? He may receive hundreds of submissions weekly, or I don't know how many he's receiving, right? So how are you going to stand out among the hundreds? They're going to look through those quickly and try to decide who they want to work with. So he mentioned a couple of things. Make sure in your subject line that you're specific. Like, so if you saw him here today, you mention that, and that'll intrigue him. That will make him want to look at your material, not just say, "Hi, I'm interested in working with you," right? So pull out something that maybe he mentioned or something he said or that you saw him here. Make sure that those links are very easy to click on to take it to your self-tape. So if you link it on, say, a YouTube channel, make sure you just have that link nice and clear, because he doesn't want to download anything. In today's world, none of us want to download any attachments. So I never download anything I don't know who it's coming from. So if a client sends me information for a self-tape, I'll download it. But if it's strangers sending me information for a self-tape, I never download it, because I don't know if that has a virus or if it's somebody trying to spam or break into my computer, right? So make sure those links are really easy. And like you mentioned, your headshot, your resume should be in the email itself. Make sure that you know how to attach those so that they're in the body of the email and then not a link. Don't send like a Google Drive link. Click here to see all my information. Make sure that you compress things down small enough, like your headshot, so that it can be put into an email and be easy for them to see. So a lot of these things you can find information on YouTube if you have questions about, like, how do I compress my headshot? How do I make sure it's smaller? Just a simple YouTube video will help you with that. So if you guys are interested in getting some more information, we do have a program that we do have auditions for. And so if you're interested in being a part of a community of like-minded people, actors and models who are interested in getting representation, Denise has set up a really great community for you guys to get weekly information, to be able to learn, to get training, to get resources, and to get in front of good agents and managers yourself to show off your talents to them. If you're interested, I'm going to put that on the banner down below. There's the link right there. It's audition.nextstarproductions.com. It'll take you to a page where you can select to audition to be a part of this community. Within the community, you can find other actors that can help you with self-tapes, right? To help you read. Other actors you can get good resources from, be able to ask questions, be able to, if you do have a question for somebody, you could reach out to the community, ask that question. There's a way to communicate with people to be able to log in. So it's a great resource for you guys. Don't forget to log in there. Also, don't forget to, if you're interested in following myself, my adventures, what I do outside of just working all the time. There's my Instagram right there. You guys are welcome to follow me there. I don't post that often, but it's definitely something I'm working on. So I look forward to maybe posting more often here in the near future. So I would love to be able to show you all the great things that are happening here. I'm in Montana right now. I did survive, you guys. No bear ate me during the program, so sorry to disappoint those who are still watching. But the great thing about that is I'm still alive, so I'll be able to join you guys next week for another great session. So I think I just got bit once by a mosquito. There's a bunch flying around. So not too bad, not too bad. It was great seeing, I see all of you here today. I look forward to meeting you, some of you guys in person at a showcase here in the near future. And that being said, have a great weekend, everyone. And I'll see you on the next one. Have a good night.